Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
Welcome to The Savage Nation, the king of talk radio. That's right, I am now the king. The ratings just came out again. The TSL Top 25 streaming talk shows. And Michael Savage has a 20 share, Rush Limbaugh 12 share, etc. And I'll talk more about that later and what it means. I want to thank you for listening to this show on all the great radio stations that I'm honored to be on, as well as on the internet, the cloud-based servers, gadgets, iPhones, Android apps, and click to listen links on social networks. Remember what I just said. Michael Savage has a 20 share according to TalkStream Live. You have to understand what that means. It means that this show is the most listened to radio show on the internet. That means mostly younger people are listening to the show on the internet. That means there's a monster audience out there that understands that Obama is conducting ethnic replacement in the United States of America, and they don't know where to turn to for salvation. The man is bringing in gangs. He's bringing in non-workers. He's bringing in adult illegals posing as children to enroll in high school. The United States of America is under siege. It's an influx that is aimed at ethnic replacement, in my opinion. I know this is a sensitive topic, and I know we're all talking about how this monster can get away with this, how he can go around Congress, go around the Supreme Court, but most importantly, go around the people without being arrested. You heard me. You know, what if you were looking at a banana republic where a president was out of control and he was defying the people's will on a daily basis? There's no country on earth that would tolerate this except this nation of decent Americans, where he puts the money in the hands of lawyers and foreign operatives to flood America with illegal aliens. And we sit here like dunces waiting for someone to save the country. And there's no one to save us. No one. We have a dictatorship right in front of our eyes. He's getting away with it. He's laughing in our face. So I want to talk with you about ethnic replacement, the term I created for this show today. We've all heard of ethnic cleansing, haven't we? Every one of you, raise your hands if you know what ethnic cleansing is. Ethnic cleansing occurs when an invading military invades a country and, to be honest with you, removes a certain ethnicity from a population by either putting them in concentration camps, deporting them, or killing them. This was done by Stalin. It was done by Hitler. It's been done by others. Now, Obama is not following that, of course, because he's a very decent man. Instead, he is following in the long footsteps of those who preceded him with the ethnic replacement that the liberal rulers have put in place in this country for a long time. Let me explain where I'm coming from. First there was birth control, aimed primarily at whites, but affecting mainly blacks. Hispanics were generally ignored, or Hispanics generally ignored the messages of the birth control eugenicists because of religious, cultural, and linguistic reasons. The Hispanics missed that message, and they knew that they would because of their religious, cultural, and linguistic reasons. Number two, there was the flooding of drugs, the normalization of random orgiastic sex without children, again generally ignored by the Hispanic population for the same above reasons, religious, cultural, and linguistic. Finally, starting with Clinton, there was the denial of green cards to Europeans who wanted to emigrate. There was the massive issuance of green cards to non-Europeans. And now finally there's the massive flooding of the United States with armies of young Hispanics, fertile Hispanics, by the way, to replace the white or European American. This is ethnic replacement as being practiced by Obama, Holder, and their gang. Now, you have to ask yourself, where are the moral enforcers of immorality, such as Choice or ZPG or the anti-population growth people? Where are all the loudmouths? Where are all the high priestesses of birth and population control, while America is being smothered by the hordes being ushered in from Central America by Obama and Pelosi? The answer, my friends, is these forces of ethnic replacement always intended to diminish the white population and replace it with a more malleable third world population. Obama is orchestrating a Malthusian war against the dominant European American population. Obama is now orchestrating a Malthusian war against the dominant European American population. This, my friends, is ethnic replacement. This is one man's opinion. I wrote it this morning on my bicycle. Sometimes my head clears on a bicycle, and like little bubbles of clarity pop up in my head, and it dawned on me. I said, wait a minute. This is not about anything except a new malleable population that can be controlled by a ruling elite. Now, others are saying things like this. Border agents know what's going on. They know the gangs are using the processing centers as recruitment hubs. We know that the TSA, look at the top of Drudge. The TSA, if you're going to fly this weekend, you'll be frisked by a $9 an hour individual, but they're going to allow illegals on planes without ID. Now, what does that mean? Tell me what that means. And why are the churches still able to hold on to their nonprofit status when they are in cahoots with the administration? The churches are violating the separation of church and state. They're violating their 501c3s. And frankly, if we had a legitimate government, I would strip the churches who were engaged in this of their 501c3s overnight, and they would stop their behavior. They would stop their perverse behavior. Because this is perverse behavior on the part of churches. Is it not? Is it not perverse of churches to be in cahoots with a government that's violating the Constitution? Well, that's one man's opinion. So, that's the opening of the show. I gave you the new ratings. Came out just minutes ago. I got it from TalkStream Live. They said the TSL top 25 streaming talk shows second quarter report for 2014 celebrates a million-mark milestone for a single quarter listening session ranking report. Michael Savage again leads the way with a whopping 20 share. Rush remains a strong second, while Laura Ingraham surges to third place. And on this, Mark Levin holds a fourth, and Glenn Beck slips to fifth. The TSL top 25 does not, by the way, record radio station listenership. It's about gadgets, iPhones, Androids, click-to-listen links on social networks. So I want to thank you for listening to the show, and there's a reason for it. The reason is pretty clear. The country is under siege by a government that is acting like an enemy. Here is Michelle Obama yesterday to the anti-American LULAC Convention, the United Latin American Citizens Convention, promising that her husband would act on his own to fix the immigration system. She stirs up racial hatred and acts as if she's a queen. She then tells the Latinos the following. I want you to listen to what this hate monger said. She said, back then, Latinos were being brutalized and killed by police and lynched by the KKK. No Mexicans allowed, said Michelle. Latinos couldn't own property or serve in a jury. And if you walked into a public building, you'd often see not 2 water fountains, but 3. 1 white, 1 black, and 1 brown. So this is Michelle Obama, instead of uniting people, stirring up hatred between the races before one of the most dangerous organizations in America, the LULAC group, and you know who they are. They are supremacists, and they want, if you read their actual code of LULAC, they want to take Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and most of California and connect it to Mexico. And so here we have the First Lady stirring up racial hatred and acting as if she's a queen, and and saying that her, quote, husband, not the president, notice she said my husband is going to fix the immigration system. Again, acting like two rogues, king and a queen. The only thing we don't have are the pictures of the shoes in the closet. Or you'd see Imelda Marcos in the White House. She makes Imelda Marcos look like a nun in terms of how she abuses this country. She has 72 servants working for her at public expense, yet you're never allowed to see a picture of them or of her. We're living in a dictatorship, a mild one at that to begin with, but it never ends well. Do any of you disagree with my depiction of this invasion from Central America being orchestrated by Obama as ethnic replacement? I mean, it's a simple statement. People write things, people say things, people create things. I've created a new phrase that you've never heard before. It's not in the literature. That's what you get for listening to the most creative mind in the history of talk radio. Ethnic replacement. You never heard of it. You heard of ethnic cleansing. We all know what that is. I'll go back again. It's like a classroom. I have to go back again and reiterate because your mind was wandering. You weren't thinking about what I was saying. You said, he's entertaining. What's he talking about today? Let's hear more of that Metallica stuff, Mike. Tell me a meatball recipe. So you were the type that got D's in school, those of you who want to hear the meatball recipes. You were the kids who never really graduated. You couldn't focus on anything a teacher was saying. You waited for the dirty joke. You waited for the innuendo. You waited for anything but the facts and the reality because you couldn't focus, because you didn't have the brains to focus. So you looked for the humor. That's why you listened to Bill Maher. That's why you listened to Colbert. You're the losers. You're the dropouts of America. They're the jesters to keep you entertained and gulled. Your country is being stolen from you, and they are the jesters of ethnic replacement. Make no mistake about it. They're tools of the government. Illegals to get lawyers, schools, and health care. We have no borders. We're not a nation. I've told you a nation is defined by borders, language, and culture. I defined it as that in 1994. We have a president who's laughing while he's doing this to us, and we have no opposition party whatsoever. We have an impotent group of sad sacks on the Republican side. And, of course, we have the billionaires, Buffett, Gates, and Adelson, pushing for amnesty. Now, we know why Adelson, the Las Vegas billionaire, would push for amnesty. He needs busboys and waiters and waitresses and housekeepers in his huge hotel empire. So for him, it's a no-brainer. Cheap labor. Why would Bill Gates want a massive influx of uneducated individuals from Central America? We know that Bill Gates is a businessman who wants the cheapest possible labor costs, and he therefore wants as many as he can get who are qualified to work in his technology enterprises. But why would he want people who can't even read or write Spanish? Why would he want gangbangers? Why would he want 2-year-olds? I don't know. Why would Buffett want them? Why would Warren Buffett want illegal aliens? How does he gain by that? Buffett is diversified in his investments. Big railroad man. That's why they blocked the Keystone XL pipeline. His stooge Obama has blocked the Keystone XL pipeline because Buffett brings the oil in from the Canadian tar sands by train. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's why Buffett's in favor of Obama, because Obama did his bidding. He blocked the most sensible thing we ever could have had. Cheap oil from Canada on an oil pipeline. This is the Savage Nation. Do you agree or disagree with me that Obama and Holder are practicing ethnic replacement? It's a simple discussion. I'll be right back.
You hear some of them. All right. Sue them. Impeach them. Really? Really? For what? You're going to sue me for doing my job? Okay.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I, Michael Savage, trust to buy my gold and silver from. SwissAmerica.com.
Give me a ticket for an aeroplane. Ain't got time to take a fast train.
Obama has just announced today, by the way, that he's leaving the White House for the longest vacation in history. August 9th to August 24th, the King and Queen will hang out with the millionaires, billionaires, and trillionaires on Martha's Vineyard. August 9th to August 24th. We don't know if Beau will be sent on an Osprey by himself, as was done last year. But we do know that the 747 will be flown to Cape Cod, and his huge entourage will take several helicopters to Martha's Vineyard, where he can be safe from the damage he's doing to the United States of America, and make certain that his supporters get the cheap labor that they want and the other buybacks that goes with any presidency. So, look, here's the thing. I've given you two topics to talk about: ethnic replacement by liberal rulers, which is ethnic cleansing without murder. And I talked about how birth control was the beginning of this and how it primarily hit whites, and blacks were disproportionately affected by the birth control, by the way, African Americans. And not so strangely enough, Hispanics generally ignored these messages of birth control because of language, because of culture, because of religion. Then they flooded drugs into the country. Then they normalized random orgiastic sex on the homosexual model, which is now rampant, by the way, in the heterosexual population amongst the young. The gay lifestyle has become basically normalized amongst the young, where it's all about sex, not about children, not about marriage. And, of course, that is aimed directly at the population control. And then, for many, many years, there's been a denial, in part, largely part, of any green cards to Europeans, by and large. There have been some, but basically very few. But instead, the green cards were given to Africans, Arabian people from the Middle East, Asia, and, of course, South America. And now we finally see the last spike being driven into the Transcontinental Railroad of ethnic replacement, which is the illegitimate, illegal, immoral, unconstitutional, massive flooding of the U.S. with armies of young, fertile Hispanics by Obama. This is ethnic replacement as practiced by Obama Holder and his gang. That's my view. It's one man's opinion. Is it yours? I don't know. Disagree with me, if you will. Give me a call. Like to hear it. 855-407-282.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now. 855-400-SAVAGE. 855-400-7282. Savage.
And find the money, and necessarily so to help the children on the border. $4 billion. $2 billion can come to Chicago.
I knew this would happen. I knew that when they smelled the gelt, they'd be out in force. There's Jesse Hyde Jackson, furious that the $4 billion slush fund is going to go to the, let's just say, not to his cronies. He can't believe it. After all these years of agitation, you think how offended you would be if you were him. You've been on the top of the offense racket for all these years. You've been living high on the hog. You've been doing very well on the offense racket. All of a sudden now, $4 billion's going to another group. I'd be angry too. Interesting. Meanwhile, a war is raging in the Middle East. Hamas is firing rockets by the dozens into Israel. They're aiming for Ben Gurion Airport. Israel struck back with warplanes, thank God, killing over 100. War is brewing in the Middle East because of Obama. Yes, because of Obama. This huckster has wrecked the entire world. The huckster has stabbed Israel in the back. The huckster is supporting all the enemies of Israel, one way or another, either openly or covertly. And war is breaking out. Meanwhile, he's getting ready for a nice vacation. I don't know. Is this country filled with idiots? I don't understand it. We know that we have a single party. We have a one-party system where the majority of all of the legislators want amnesty for all the reasons that I've told you. And there's only a modest outcry from a few decent Americans in Congress. And I don't understand it. I mean, you can argue that you need immigration for a nation when you're lacking workers. So you selectively pick people who you need in those fields if you cannot find them indigenously. Let's say that Bill Gates doesn't have enough money. As you well know, there's never enough money for people like him. And so naturally he wants to pay people as little as possible. I mean, that's the way business goes. He pretends to be Mr. Nice Guy with the sweater, but he's a very good actor. So he needs cheaper tech workers. So does Facebook. Zuckerface needs cheaper tech workers. Zuckerface didn't make enough money on Schmendrick book. So Zuckerface needs cheap tech workers. That's why he's marching, Mr. Schmendrick, for illegal immigration. But How do these people coming in now who are illiterate in Spanish, don't speak English, have no education, the children are 2 to 4 years old, are they going to work for Zuckerface or Gates? I don't understand this. Do you? Who's going to support them? Zuckerface isn't. They're not moving in with Zuckerface. They're not moving into Bill Gates' mansion up in Washington. He's not inviting them in. So why are they doing this? Do you actually believe that the liberal is compassionate? No, I think they're controlling. It's not about compassion. It's about control. Just change the C word from compassion to control. You'll understand their policies. That's what I think. So that's why I've been talking with you today about ethnic replacement. Now, I did my whole show today in 10 minutes. That's what it's about. That's why the show is so good. I've talked with you about a new concept, ethnic replacement, which you cannot find in the literature because I created it for you. That's why it's called, the show is so popular. That's why it is number one on streaming radio with a 20 share, Rush's 2 with a 12 share, Laura Ingram's 3 with a 6 share. And then the rest fall off the cliff. But the thing is, and some of the other talkers are excellent, doesn't mean they're bad. I'm just telling you who's listening to me, and it's mainly the younger people on devices, on the stream. They know I'm the king of talk radio for the ideas that I put out. And there must be a high entertainment value as well. I mean, I do launch into those. And I want to thank you for listening. But the thing is, I've given you both ideas at once. I'm number one in streaming, and I talk with you about ethnic replacement. I'm really looking for good callers, is what I really want. I think one day, I'm going to do a 10-minute radio show once a week. Maybe I'm just made for... You know, Walter Winchell had it made. He did one radio show for an hour a week. The whole nation listened to that hour. He was before my time, but that was a different model. Radio today is a long-form radio, or you're not in the business. Yeah, you can do the minute. That's not bad, but you can't monetize the show unless it's a full show. That's what I hear. Doesn't mean the ideas aren't good, but Walter Winchell in the old days would do a 1 hour a week show, I think on Sunday nights, I don't know when, and the whole nation, of listeners tuned into that 1 hour. Maybe that's what I should do in my retirement. And then to spend the rest of the days rescuing elephants and gorillas, hunting poachers with ex-Navy SEALs and trying to kill poachers. Maybe learn to shoot from a helicopter. Maybe I can man a big machine gun from a helicopter and kill poachers in Africa. That would be a fitting way for me to end my existence on the earth. Machine gunning elephant poachers in Africa. Oh, I'd love to. That would be a hell of a thing to do in my 80s and 90s. I'd love that. I mean, if George Bush Sr. can jump out of an airplane at 90, God bless him. I can learn how to man a helicopter door gun and fly over Africa with ex-Navy SEALs hunting for elephant killers and kill them. Oh, what fun that would be to save those poor babies. There's anyway, whatever. So this is not an imperial presidency, but a rogue presidency, raging out of control. He can be stopped. Don't say he can't. Forget impeachment. Forget suing. The man can be taken out of office by the opposition party for violating the Constitution. Forget the base. All I keep hearing is base, 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 base. I don't care about the base, because if there's no country, the base doesn't matter. They have to act now. They can't wait for the election. They can't wait for after Martha's Vineyard. That's why the sneak is running away for all those weeks, because he intends to escalate the ethnic replacement while he's playing golf, riding a bicycle, and eating an ice cream cone and playing We Did Some Stuff Today, Mr. Down to Earth. No, it has to be done now. The opposition party can arrest him. What? No, let me put it in another context. Let's change it to another thing, because I know you can't understand this. You can't understand. You can't understand what I'm saying to you. It's impossible. What if a president did something so egregious that it was beyond impeachment? See, everyone's saying impeach, don't impeach, sue, don't sue. What if he's done something that is beyond impeachment? What does a country do at that point? They arrest the man. But you need an opposition party willing to arrest a man who would do a thing like that. So now the only question is, what would something beyond impeachment be? Well, how about aiding and abetting the invasion of your own country? How about violating your oath of office? How about aiding and abetting the importation of gang members? Shall I go down the list? Look, I'm at my wit's end with this, because this is it. This is the Alamo here. This is the Alamo. The man is destroying the country on purpose. They're reshaping the country, as anyone who studies history knows. And all of the intelligent, successful people that I know see it the way I do. The few people I let into my life, the few people I talk with, the few people who have brains, all see the world the way I do. Every one of them. I don't know anyone who disagrees with me. And I'm not even getting callers who disagrees with me, by the way. So if you want to call me, we can have that discussion. Could you play the Metallica again? I'm just in the mood for Metallica, not Isaiah. I'll drive away all the atheists now, Isaiah. You know that I'm the ensign upon the high mountain that Isaiah wrote about? If you read Isaiah in the Old Testament and you read chapter 13, verse 2, he says, set ye up an ensign upon the high mountain. I am that ensign. I'm not the only one, but I am an ensign upon the high mountain. Lift up the voice unto them. You don't understand what's going on. The world is at war because we have a monstrous, manipulative, evil empire ruining the world. The world is at war. People say, gee, you shouldn't say these things. You shouldn't say any of these things, Michael. It's bad for your career. It's this and that. What should I do if this is what I see going on? Tell me what I should be doing. What should I be talking about? I don't know how long I'm going to be on this earth. I don't know how long this radio show is going to last. I don't know how long we're going to have the First Amendment. I have to make every second on this show count. Do you understand that? And I can't tell you that there's anything else that I care to talk about. That this beautiful nation is being decimated by this evil administration. I'll read you Isaiah again. Your land, strangers devour it in your presence. I'll read it again in case you missed it. Your land, strangers devour it in your presence. Wow. The whole head is sick. The whole heart faint. From the sole of the foot even unto the head, there is no soundness in it, but wounds and bruises and festering sores. They have not been pressed, neither bound up, neither mollified with oil. Your country is desolate. Your land, strangers devour it in your presence. It's enough to make a strong man weep. You know, I'm not a particularly biblically oriented individual, but I do read the Bible regularly. Sometimes I read it for historical purposes. Sometimes I read it to keep in touch with my ancestry. But I look at it at a time like this, and I'm telling you, we're living in biblical times. It's not just a smiling guy who's eating pizza and playing pool. It comes in many forms, this destruction. In the old days, it would have come with an evil, loud dictator screaming like a madman. He never would have gotten to first base. But then they got very smart. They found out that you can win more people with honey than you can with vinegar. So they found a honey-talking individual to put into the country that they can destroy from within. And I'm trying to tell you, first it was birth control. And I can tell you right now, I'll repeat it right now, if these liars against population growth going back to at least the 50s, it predates the 50s. I think Sanger started in the 20s, trying to target certain groups, killing off the poor and killing off ethnics. Margaret Sanger was a bloodthirsty eugenicist. But she was the beginning of birth control. So first there was birth control that primarily hit whites and blacks. Hispanics missed it because of the religion, culture, and linguistic reasons I mentioned. Then, in the 60s, they flooded the country with drugs. They normalized random orgiastic sex without babies. Again, that more or less missed the Hispanic population in America, again because of their religious, cultural, and linguistic reasons. And then they started to change the immigration laws. Very subtly, they changed the quotas, reducing the numbers coming in from Europe and increasing those coming in from Africa, the Middle East, and Asia, and South America and Central America. Now, finally, the last spike in the Intercontinental Railroad of Destruction is being laid in front of your eyes by Obama, and they're massively flooding the U.S. with armies of young, fertile Hispanics with one goal in mind, and it's not to work. 2-year-olds don't work. 12-year-olds don't work. No, it's to replace the Euro-American population with ethnic replacement. That's my opinion. Now, I realize this may sound shocking to an average listener sitting somewhere in Dumbo land, saying, what the heck am I listening to? Who is this guy? I never heard anything like that. Who is this guy? What do you mean, Michael Savage? Who is he? What is he, some nut? What do you mean ethnic replacement? Well, if you actually listened to what I said and studied what I'm saying, you might agree with me. How else can you explain it? I want you to tell me, how else can you explain what Obama and Holder are doing? How? All right, explain it to me. Why are they doing this? Again, from a rational fiscal point of view, if you want to bring in workers, I can understand that, but they're not workers. Not bringing in workers. Well, what workers? Where are the 2-year-olds going to work? In a factory? The mothers? The illiterate mothers are going to work? You know, I have a housekeeper, a legal green card holding, wonderful lady from El Salvador. And I asked her what she thinks about this influx. She said, it's crazy. I never saw anything like this. Why Obama do it, she says to me. Why he do it? She said, what is he doing? She said, they're not going to work. Why he bring them into this country? And she's from El Salvador. She doesn't understand it. So the immigrants who are here don't understand it either. Do you think that the guy who came here from Mexico, legally or illegally, who's worked his way up to owning a new pickup truck and has a little family, taking care of his children better than anyone I've ever seen since my father's day? They're very much like my father. They're very home-oriented. They love their children. I've seen them in the white dresses at the churches on Sunday. I've wrote about it 10 years ago. I told you what I saw at a Kentucky Fried Chicken. I saw the poor working Hispanic there with his children and his wife that just back from church. I saw the little girl in a little dress. I mean, it was heart-rending to watch this. Do you think he wants gangbangers from El Salvador in this country? Does he want a flood of fertile women with babies brought into this country? Tell me what he gains by it. What do you think, they all high-five each other? Is that what you think's going on here? You're mistaken, because that makes you a racist if that's what you think. No, my friends, that's not what they're doing. There's something so wrong here that either it's being done as ethnic replacement or because in a trite way we have the insane running the asylum. That's all I can think of. I'll be right back.
Border Patrol is supposed to process these people, and then they are immediately turned over to ICE. These people are then given a court date, told to show up for immigration hearings, and oftentimes they do not. These 16 MS-13 members are scheduled for placement somewhere in the United States.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
We're almost out of time on this incredible hour about ethnic replacement on the Savage Nation. I'll have more to say on this subject in the next hour, but I want to get one caller. And Joe on WABC, fire away. Go ahead, please.
I'm a white and normal recent college graduate, and a couple weeks ago you had a caller who was a black man. I think his name was Ira, and he said that America just needs to die. And I'm a white guy, normal like I said, recent college graduate, and I don't see what future people like me have in this country. We get a job, we get taxed to hell, we have to pay for...
Well, let me ask you something. Let's say a man hates white people and says America has to die. Can he give an example of a country that will succeed that he can base it upon?
I don't think you could. I would love to see it survive. But
is there a country in Africa, for example, where more is available for people than available here? No. No. I don't know what your future is, Joe. I have no idea if there is a future for America. I do know that Nancy Pelosi should think of her little grandchildren when she's doing this to this country. I do know that just as the Native American was sold down the river by the Native American chiefs, the so-called Indian chiefs, for wampum and guns, and we saw the decimation of the tribes, the Indian chiefs are killing us here in America.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage. Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
My favorite group's Metallica. talking about puppet masters. And my thesis today is that the puppet masters of the liberal persuasion are not being compassionate with regard to the invasion from Central America, but controlling. And their ultimate desire is not cheap labor, but ethnic replacement. And I then traced it back to the early days of birth control, aimed primarily at whites, affecting blacks and whites, but generally not Hispanics. Then the flood of drugs into the country, the normalization of random orgiastic sex. And before this invasion, the manipulation of green cards, denying those to Europeans by and large, and the massive issuance of green cards to non-Europeans beginning under Bill Clinton. And now finally the last spike in the Intercontinental Railroad of ethnic replacement, which is flooding the U.S., flooding it with armies of young, fertile Hispanics to replace the white or European American. I call this ethnic replacement, being practiced on purpose by Obama, Holder, and his gang. That's all. It's one man's opinion. It's an idea. It's an idea. You're threatened by an idea. Does an idea offend you? Does an idea threaten you in some way? Should the idea be illegal? Am I allowed to see it in a context other than that put forward by Nancy Pelosi, saying it's about protecting the children? Let's begin with some callers. Okay, let's go to WJR in Detroit. Glad to be on this station. Lynn Arid, welcome to this Savage Nation. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I think you are a racist, cryberry.
All right. Now, why don't you say something intelligent? Just show us. Look, I know you went probably to the 5th grade. You sure have a higher vocabulary than that, don't you?
You have your opinion. I have.
Sir, what? Look, you went to at least the 5th grade. You learned more than 4 words, didn't you?
All you do.
Isn't there something more in your vocabulary than the word racist? Can you hold a discussion? Can you have a discussion?
You want to put everything on the back of Obama. You want to lay it on his doorstep.
But he's the one. Wait a minute, sir. He's flooding America right now with illegal aliens from Central America. Who's doing it, me or him?
They told to start the war in Iraq. What about weapons and that?
Sir, we're talking about the war against America right now, coming into the border from Central America, not about Iraq, Lynn Arid. That's what we're talking about. Obama's the president. He's letting it happen. Don't you understand that?
He's not letting it.
Take a walk. Go down to the 7-Eleven. Leave me alone. Don't waste my time and don't bring down the IQ of my audience, for God's sakes. You know, pick up a book once in a while. Read something. Take your hand off the TV clicker, for God's sakes. Okay, let's try somebody with an IQ above 72. You know, when I was a high school student, we were actually taught that there was a gradation of intelligence. I think they've eliminated that. And the lowest levels were morons, imbeciles, and idiots. I don't think there are any people declared to be morons, imbeciles, and idiots anymore, because they're running the country. They're running the education department. They're running the institutions of culture. So they've eliminated any definition of low intelligence. WABC, Elliot, go ahead. You're on the Savage Nation.
Oh, hey, Dr. Savage. God bless you. Well, let me get to this point. Well, 3 things I'd like to cover with you. 1, I have an idea about how to control the border. 2, I'd like to dish the liberals with their own arguments about diversity and about what they call Anglos and La Raza. 3rd, I have an ex-girlfriend who's a big liberal, likes your show, actually, but she's a big liberal, and she told me what liberals think about this. So choose any one of the 3. Which one would you like me to...
Okay, what do liberals think about the invasion of illegal aliens from Central America?
Okay, well, she's a rich girl, a Vassar grad. She and her friends all think it's good because it's getting the white males. And they want to reduce the number of white males in the country.
Okay, so the feminist movement has poisoned white women into hating white men. Is that what you're saying in plain English?
She doesn't hate me personally. I mean, she's a nice girl, but...
So what has the white male done to her that she hates? Did her father molest her?
Well...
I mean, that's kind of a common story amongst Vassar... what is it that she hates about white males? I don't quite understand it. What did they do wrong? They defeated Hitler? Was that wrong?
She herself wants to...
They liberated the slaves? Was that wrong?
Excellent points, Mike. But
they invented the light bulb. Was that wrong?
Yeah, I can't believe they banned the incandescent bulb either. But Bush signed that, by the way. But she obviously she doesn't have a leg to stand on, but she herself lives in the whitest neighborhood in Brooklyn, Park Slope.
Well, of course. Where else can she get a double latte with extra foam?
Exactly. And I told her, if you love Hispanic neighborhoods, want to make the country Hispanic, why don't you live on Castle Hill Avenue or Parkchester in the Bronx?
Why doesn't she move up to Spanish Harlem? There's still a few streets left where she might feel at home and comfortable.
Sure, yeah. No, but anyway, that's her thinking. But as I told her, you liberals say you want diversity. If you wanted diversity, and if America was really a melting pot, you'd want different ingredients from all over the world. You'd want Europeans, East Europeans, Asians, Africans, Middle Easterners. But instead, it's almost, great majority Hispanic. And
well, not only that, Elliot, but a melting pot requires that the elements being added to the pot are willing to be melted.
Exactly.
Now, if you bring people in who won't learn English, who wave their national flag, and despise the dominant culture, that's not a melting pot anymore, is it?
No, and, I just got a haircut the other day. The woman was a nice woman from the Dominican Republic, but she couldn't understand what I was saying about how to cut my hair. And so that's just another example. I mean, one of countless thousands. But also this idea of La Raza, they call themselves a race. Let's set that aside about whether any one race should call themselves a race. I know that...
No, La Raza is a brown supremacist organization, in my estimation. It always has been. If you read their charter, it's about repossessing Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and California.
And, maybe historically they're upset about what happened in Texas because there were white settlers that came into Texas and they kind of took it over for whites. But they asked for illegal immigration, the Mexican government, whereas now...
I got to hand it to La Raza. They're able to do it without firing a shot. They're very clever. They finally have a man inside the White House doing it for them under the guise of compassion.
You're right.
You got to give them an A for subterfuge.
Yeah, and they're very close to the Obama administration. They have officials in the White House working with...
Cecilia Munoz. There is a name. M-U-N-O-Z. She was formerly the head of La Raza.
Right,
she was an outsider. Then Obama came in and put her inside the White House as a senior policy advisor. She is, in my opinion, orchestrating this invasion.
Yeah, she and Valerie Jarrett too, probably. But let me get to the point about La Raza. They call themselves the race. They're more than one race. Even on their own arguments, there are at least four races. They're Spanish, Portuguese settlers mixed in with native Central and Southern American cultures. That's at least four races. They're not one race. In fact,
Yes, and Spanish is not the indigenous language of the area either. It's a language of conquest. It's the language of the conquistador. It's not the language that was there when the Spanish invaded, by the way.
Yes, sir. And the racial theories are all wrong. They call all whites Anglos. There are Slavic whites who are not Anglos. There are Southern European whites. There are Greek whites. There are all kinds of whites who are not Anglos.
Isn't that part of a racist view of people who are not of color? Is to lump them into one group? Isn't that rather racist?
Yeah, there are all kinds of whites. Will you call yourself an Anglo? You're from Russia and you're Jewish. I
call myself Michael, and my last name is Savage. I call myself an American. That's what I call myself.
Yeah, you're an outstanding...
Actually, I call myself a human being is what I call myself. But the fact of the matter is I don't identify ethnically. I identify as an American, to be honest with you, because that's how I was raised. Unfortunately for us, we have immigrants coming in who don't like America, hate the American flag, won't speak English, can't read English, and yet want the government to take care of them. We know that's a fact.
And we can't have too much of any one particular ethnic group. I'm half Chinese. My mother's Chinese. I would be against a majority Chinese immigration to the U.S. because that would, skew the culture.
Well, let me ask you something. Talk about the Chinese people. Do they permit immigration into China?
Well, they watch their borders pretty carefully. I mean, I know...
Oh, yes. Oh, they're very protective of their ethnicity, aren't they?
Well, the Chinese, I know you're critical of them, and rightly so, about the...
No. I'm critical of the communist Chinese government, not of the Chinese culture or the Chinese people. That's two different things.
And that's one thing. The Chinese call themselves the Han people. The liberals don't get the point. Every culture thinks their ways are best. And they should, because that's their wild...
That's right. That gives a person the ability to get through a day, to walk around with a false sense of superiority. I get it. That's the human condition. But aside from that, China does not permit any immigration. Japan does not permit any immigration. They are virtually ethnically pure nations. Do you know that?
Fairly pure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's been some mixing, but and there's a Chinese diaspora across, the Pacific and so forth.
Yes.
But
Oh, no, I'm talking about mainland China.
yeah,
I'm talking about the immigration laws of China and Japan.
what they're doing. Oh, let me get to my third point, which is how to protect the U.S. border. And, of course, the Chinese government, they had border wars with India, Vietnam, Russia. You know all about that in the Cold War period. So they know about their borders.
Well, we have a border war going on right now, but they're so clever, they're calling it compassionate relocation of refugees. But it's a war. You know it's a war, and I know it's a war.
Yeah, I mean,
Do you okay, hold it. I don't want to put words in your mouth. You sound like a compassionate, intelligent man. Do you believe bringing in millions of illegal aliens is compassionate, or is it a war?
No, I mean, maybe you give first you have to build a wall. And it can't be a fence, because fences can be cut into. It has to be a wall topped with barbed wire. And the
Israelis built a wall, and the suicide bombing stopped, didn't it? Remember the liberals were screaming when the Israelis were building a wall that it was against human rights, that the poor Palestinians would be denied access to the country they were trying to destroy? The Israelis said, go to hell, we'll build it anyway. And you didn't see another suicide bombing after they built the wall. And the liberals now are telling us that a wall is a part of a totalitarian regime. It's the only thing that will save us is a wall. The Chinese built the Great Wall of China, didn't they?
Exactly. It has to be.
And what was the Great Wall of China built for? It was to keep out the Mongol hordes, was it not?
That's right. And, even though it didn't really succeed, it was built for defensive purposes, and it would be a lot cheaper. The U.S. can lay concrete and put a fence up, and then you just put a machine gun tower every kilometer.
Now you're getting silly. Now you're trying to bait me and lead me into somewhere I don't want to go, and I thank you. You've been doing very well so far, but I'm not going there. Thank you very much. We will continue to talk about the splendor of America before it was decimated by the Obama administration. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I, Michael Savage, trust to buy my gold and silver from. SwissAmerica.com. It is the king of talk radio, Michael Savage. In case you missed it, you're not going to read it anywhere. You're not going to hear about it anywhere, but you're going to hear it here. Numbers don't lie. I got this from TalkStream Live just before the show started on a lazy Friday. And Michael Savage is number one in streaming talk radio shows with an astounding 20 share. They're unheard of. Limbaugh, God bless him, is at a 12 share. Laura Ingram's at a 6 share. And the rest are beyond her. But you won't hear this anywhere else. But numbers don't lie. I'm posting it on michaelsavage.com. You can link yourself. So in that sense, I'm telling this for a reason. One, I'm boasting, because I'm not for myself, who will be. But I want you to understand how large my audience really is. It's enormous, and it's listened to around the world. I'm sort of the voice of America. And I want to thank you all for listening on the great radio stations and on the devices. But I'm not just here to entertain you. I've been around sort of too long for that. Entertain I can. I can do the verbal Mick Jagger, believe me. I can do it if I want to, if I'm in the mood. I'm not in the mood. We're being invaded. Now, if we had a viable military that had not been purged by Obama very carefully over the last few years, he purged the military of combat commanders who might have acted to save this country. But he got rid of all of them, and he did it right after Benghazi because they were ready to break their silence. It's all coming out in my book, Stop the Coming Civil War. I have their names, when they were removed, why they were removed, the pretext, the fake accusations. So there is no military anymore. No, there is a compliant group of men with guns. I wouldn't call it a military. So don't look to the military to save the country. You're not going to see a coup in this country to save us from this rogue regime. It's never going to happen. Never. We don't have an opposition party. We have no opposition press. But the worst part is that the billionaires and trillionaires are behind him. He's not doing this on his own. You got to understand, the billionaires and trillionaires are behind this. You take a look at Bill Gates. Why would he be in favor of massive relocation of populations into this country? You say, well, cheaper labor, but these people can't work in his companies. 2-year-old children can't run in his devices. So what's this about? $4 billion they're going to raise it from the taxpayer? Why don't they just look into the Microsoft tax structure, the double Irish and the other schemata used by the major corporations such as Microsoft to evade billions of dollars in taxes every year? And they should take the money from those corporations to pay the $4 billion to give the children soccer balls and tamales and a clean pair of pants, whatever they're going to do with the $4 billion. How much of that money that he's asking for will go into the hands of contractors? Answer all of it. Answer all of it. It's one of the greatest scams in American history. That's why Jesse Jackson all of a sudden said, what? Listen to clip 27 now, and you'll hear what I'm talking about. This is Jesse Jackson.
If we can find the money, and necessarily so to help the children on the border, $4 billion, $2 billion can come to Chicago.
See, he smelled it. He said, oh, my God. I've been working this racket for years, and they're going to give them $4 billion? They can find $4 billion. We can get two of it. We can skim off a deuce off it. So don't think that it's falling on ripe ears across the land. Oh, no. Rick in Destin, Florida. Destination, Florida. Welcome. What's on your mind, Rick?
Dr. Savage, good afternoon, and congratulations. Certainly an achievement well earned. And
thank you. So what's your main point? I don't want to cut you off. I only have 37 seconds in this hour.
Let's get to this. Let's not forget that the GDP was revised 3 times, down to negative 2.9%. Let's remember that that's in nominal dollars, not real dollars.
Well, so, Rick, why does Wall Street want an invasion of illiterate people who will not be working? How does Wall Street benefit?
The cost per individual with welfare benefits is $126,000 annually. You take another...
Hold on. This is too important to blow off. Rick, stay with us. I want to know more about Wall Street behind the invasion.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Welcome back to the Savage Nation, doing some high-low Szechuan cooking on the Savage Nation. I'm thinking of food all of a sudden because the weekend's coming up. And a friend of mine who speaks Chinese, a Chinese scholar and a tremendous individual, is having a birthday party at a Chinese restaurant in, of all places, the East Bay, not even in San Francisco. And they have Szechuan cookery, and it's interesting how complex Chinese cooking is. We realize that. Of course, that's why we all love it. Not the junk that most of us eat. But some of the preparation techniques are astounding. Hot and then high-low cooking. It's not just putting it in a pan the way we do. High-low cooking, amazing. High heat, low heat, high heat, low heat. That's what I use in radio. That's one of my tricks. They may have Kung Pao chicken. I have Kung Pao talk. They have tea smoked duck. I have vodka smoked talk. They have twice cooked pork. I have twice cooked bad listener. They may have Sichuan hot pot. I have talk hot pot. They may have spicy deep fried chicken. I have spicy deep fried conversation. They may have Dan Dan noodles. I have darn good talk. And so you have to understand that everything is related to food in my show, one way or the other. Yes, indeed. And I do like Mexican food, don't get me wrong. Never complained about it yet. I don't eat it, but I like it. I like the idea that it's there. I can't digest beans. It's very interesting. This is a very interesting conversation I'm about to have. I'm talking about ethnic replacement on the Savage Nation and how this is a conspiracy on the part of the elites, the so-called elites. They're really just the junk of civilization, going all the way back to the Clinton administration. The junk of Anglo society is actually out to destroy Anglo society or Euro society in the minds of anyone who's studying this from the top down. Looking at birth control, drugs, sex, rock and roll, green cards, and now the massive influx. It's a gigantic conspiracy. It has nothing to do with compassion whatsoever. But the fact of the matter is, if you look at cultures, you see, I'm an expert in ethnic things. I happen, before my PhD, I had a master's degree that I earned, and one of the fields that I was an expert in is in ethnicities, various ethnic cuisines and cultures and this and that. And I spent many years studying cultural attributes, from cooking to various other things, from one culture to the other. And you may say, and I once wrote a book on ethnic diets. It's very interesting. And my argument then in the 1980s was that different ethnic groups are actually bioadapted for different diets. We can't just all eat anything. We've adapted over a long period of time to eat a certain kind of diet. Now, many of us can't accept that. We go to Thai one day, Chinese the next day, Italian the next day. We say nothing's wrong with me. Well, no, everything's wrong with you. That's the reason you're a health neurotic, is because you're eating foods that are alien to your body. Your body can't even absorb or digest them. But that's a topic for another day. I mean, I'll one day do a whole show on ethnic cuisine and ethnic diets, something I studied for years. But I want to make a larger point. Not all foods are digestible or appropriate for all individuals on the planet, which is why there are specific ethnic diets. Let me give you an example. Some of us cannot eat fava beans. Fava beans, a common bean in Italian food. It causes fava bean hemolysis in people of certain ethnic backgrounds. We lack the enzyme necessary to break down fava beans, and it literally causes internal bleeding. It's called fava bean hemolysis. You don't know anything about it because it's not known. I'm an expert in the field. That's one example, one dramatic example. I, for example, cannot eat beans in general. If I eat Mexican food, I always say hold the beans. Sometimes I'll get a taco, a fish taco, no beans, because I can't digest beans. They make me sick. They sit in my stomach. I don't have the enzyme necessary to break down beans. So you could say that my genetics are not adapted for it. And you could reverse that in any other way that you wish. The point I'm making is quite obvious to anyone who can follow a train of thought here. And I need not beat it up. The question is, why is he getting away with it and who's behind it? Let's go back to Rick, who has a little more time now, from Destin, Florida. Rick, you're saying Wall Street is behind this invasion.
Almost certainly, Dr. Savage. And we must go back. We have to look at the timing of things and reactions to the timing of these things. We saw first quarter GDP revised 3 times. The fact that they tried and attempted to revise 3 times, we know the CPI index is a complete fraud. They've removed half the items in that basket to project.
Well, let me pause right there so people follow you. In my book, Trickle Up Poverty, I wrote that Bill Clinton was the first to juggle the books by removing the cost of food and the cost of fuel, gasoline and other fuels, from the cost of living index. That's how he initially started to fudge the books.
Used cars and jewelry and many other items have been removed from that. You are correct. While he emptied out the Social Security fund and pushed it into the general fund, and many of these things did go on at that time. And you're correct. The changing of the unemployment formula, I did an article about 2 months ago showing and proving, and you've discussed this on the show, and you're the only one that's discussed this, is the fact that I can take the current unemployment formula and I can show you a 0% unemployment rate with not a single person employed in this country. So that's how much credibility that unemployment rate has. Now, with this said, the fact that 3 times they revised means they're desperate. They can't tweak it anymore. They can't.
Yes, we have an out of control inflation right now under Obama, which is why high end real estate is out of control. And high end real estate, by the way, represents in some ways as a better picture of our actual state of inflation than the numbers being put out by his phonies in the government.
That's right, and directly related to the CPI index, which has removed half the items in there to reflect it. It's not just switching from steaks to hamburgers. It's actually removing these items, as you mentioned.
Right, but Rick, so how does Wall Street benefit by flooding America with illegal aliens? I still don't follow it.
Okay, I'm going to get to it now. Number one, you got an election coming up. If you have 2 GDP in the negative quarters back-to-back, you're going into a recession. Make no mistake, a recession was 2007 and 2009. We're in a depression, but a very special depression. It's different than the 1933. This is a debt depression. This is debt deflation. You can't do much with it. As you heard, Yellen keeps speaking about we need inflation. Here's the key. Velocity of money. There is none. It hit like 0 the last quarter with that negative reporting. Velocity of money is the movement of money, okay? That's every time you go to the store, you transact business, you use a credit card, you pay cash. That's the velocity of money moving around the economy. That has come to a halt. Now, this invasion is basically going to achieve 3 things. and this rolls it in. One, they can't afford another negative quarter of GDP. First of all, the GDP is probably down around 10, 12 trillion. It's not 16 trillion. They report it in nominal dollars, not real dollars, which means they don't account for the inflation, which is roughly around 12 to 15%. And then they don't remove from it all the government handouts. Now, ask yourself a question, because as you say, common sense is always rules. You're looking for $4 billion. We had a slush fund created with the $856 billion stimulus plan created to bail out the banks, AIG, General Motors, Chrysler, things of that nature. There's about $300 billion left in that fund. So why are you putting on this charade that you need $4 billion? You have $300 billion left in that slush fund from that stimulus plan for shovel-ready jobs that never occurred. Keep in mind, in the 2000s...
So wait, are you arguing that the $4 billion will be additional stimulus money, in essence? Is that what you're saying?
Almost certainly, as I mentioned before the...
So in other words, Obama wants to spend $4 billion through his cronies. It runs through their hands, the middlemen. They rake off the money, but somehow it gets spent and it pushes the economy, the economic indicators. Is that fundamentally what you're saying?
Exactly, and it creates a velocity of money again. For example, the buses that they're giving vouchers...
So in other words, the illegal aliens still have to go out and buy leche, right?
You got it.
They have to buy leche, they have to buy rice, they have to buy carne, they have to buy the chicken, they have to buy clothes, they have to buy zapatos. And so you're saying that pushes the economy?
Velocity. Now, the entitlements that are given, as I mentioned earlier before the break, create the cost to the taxpayer, $126,000 annually. That's your medical care, dental care, your debit cards, your earned income credit, $5,600.
What, you mean to take care of a welfare patient recipient is $126,000?
Approximately. When you compute in, say, a single parent with 3 or 4 children, you look at the cost of the medical health insurance to an individual, then you...
Oh, sure. I see them pushing the strollers around. They haven't worked a day in their life.
Exactly.
Never worked a day in their life, but they got 3 already in the stroller and 1 in the basket, 1 in the oven.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're the wage earners. The wage earners are born, not made. I get it.
Mm-hmm. And now, you take, say, $126,000, and they're coming in about $90,000 to $100,000. We know this isn't. They don't want you seeing in the FEMA camps. There's many issues why they don't want you looking in those FEMA camps. You have pregnant females in there that haven't delivered yet, so they're basically aiding and abetting anchor babies, which is illegal, okay?
Why do they want more of the illiterate masses in here? I don't get it. They're not workers.
All right, you're exactly correct. Now, this is NAFTA, and this is the taking down of the borders.
Are you saying that they want them here because of, let's say, the $126,000 per family cost? They want that money flowing through the illiterate family in order to, what, stimulate the economy?
So you end up with a second quarter GDP growth of 1% to 2% going into the election. You're not reporting a recession all over again, but really we're in a depression. Okay, that's number one.
I've seen a depression. I know it's a selective depression with government bailouts and, of course, the trick bookkeeping by Obama. I get it.
Certainly. You've had a good teacher, Bill Clinton, as you mentioned earlier, okay?
Well, before we pass Bill Clinton, do you remember who his Secretary of the Treasury was?
Yeah, Rubin.
Thank you. And why don't you tell the people who owe Rubin, the nice fly fisherman, where he worked before going to work for Bill Clinton, and how he destroyed the markets with the elimination of the Glass-Steagall Act, which collapsed the economy, and caused this mad, insane investment called, not investment, by the way, none of it's investment. This Wild West Wall Street that we have was created by Bill Clinton because Rubin did it, who had come from Goldman Sachs. Look, I know you know this. You must be a broker. Are you a broker?
No, actually, I was a CFO as in 9/11. I'm a survivor, but I really don't want to go into that.
Well, you're amazing. I mean, I cover this in my Trickle Up Poverty book. I thought that more of America would want to know who manipulated this crash, how they manipulated it. But I'm looking forward now, not backward. I never thought that they would flood America with illegals and get away with it in front of my eyes without anyone stopping them. I never thought it would happen.
Yeah, well, listen, Phil Gramm slips the bill in on a bill that was already debated in the House and Senate, already passed. He slips it in the last minute just like Obamacare was handled, okay? It passes. Now, Phil Gramm's not done. Phil Gramm now comes out in 2005 before he resigns, and he slips in the Futures Commodities Exemption Act. Now, what that was, that's the derivatives. So all of this occurred, as you stated in your book, and a wonderful book, by the way, a pleasure reading once, twice. Here's the deal. If we still had Glass-Steagall, the wall put in place in 1933 because of what occurred in 1929.
That's right. Wild speculation caused the great 1928 depression. They put in Glass-Steagall to stop the wild speculation. Bill Clinton, through Robert Rubin, eliminated this wall and caused the wild speculation, which caused the housing crash.
That is exactly correct, with also the Community Reinvestment Act of Jimmy Carter. Let's not forget that. Also, let's not forget on September 10th, 2001.
Wait, Rick, I think you're such a brilliant guy, and you can connect the dots, but my average listener can only take, I would say, a minute or two of a thought before they flip the channel. Why don't you tell them what this has to do with Wall Street, why the billionaires on Wall Street want the illegals in America?
Because you have to crash the United States, its sovereignty, its borders, its language. They've already done that. Now you've got to finally take it down. You have to take it down. Most of your production is China. Okay? They took out Japan. Japan was number 2. Now I don't even know what they are. They're living on funny money, okay? The same thing's being done with the United States. You're looking at $17.5 trillion in an annual debt. You got a balance sheet and income statement. So when they say this year's surplus or deficit, that's like your profit statement. That's for this year. So that's all fudged up. But then when you look at the balance sheet, those are your loans that you owe.
Okay, but we're talking fiscal talk here. How does bringing in millions of peasants who can't read or write in their own language, how does it help an economy?
It does not. This is an act of war, an act of treason, because you're going to crash this country for good. And here's the very important thing. Our GDP, 70% of it comes from consumer spending. 50% of that spending today is cashless through debit cards and welfare and online transactions.
Oh, my God. So it's all invented by the Obama administration. The whole economy is held up on a house of cards. Well, you're a brilliant man. Rick, this is an amazing call. Unfortunately, I have to do some fiscal work on the Savage Nation and satisfy my wonderful sponsors. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Welcome back to the Savage Nation. This Friday I've been talking about ethnic replacement, which is ethnic cleansing without murder, as the end goal of this massive invasion from the border. I also told you about the fact that I am now the king of talk radio, 2 books in a row on TalkStream Live. I'm number 1 with a 20 share. Limbaugh's got a 12 share. And this is a big deal because it means that the metrics that are being used, gadgets, iPhones, Androids, click-to-listen links on social networks, mainly the younger audience, they're rushing to the show because they see the handwriting on the wall and they need someone to explain to them what's going on. God bless America. Thanks for giving me 15 minutes, and I hope I've given you America.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage. Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, Michael Savage.
Obama has just announced today, by the way, that he's leaving the White House for the longest vacation in history. August 9th to August 24th, the King and Queen will hang out with the millionaires, billionaires, and trillionaires on Martha's Vineyard. August 9th to August 24th. We don't know if Beau will be sent on an Osprey by himself, as was done last year. But we do know that the 747 will be flown to Cape Cod, and his huge entourage will take several helicopters to Martha's Vineyard, where he can be safe from the damage he's doing to the United States of America, and make certain that his supporters get the cheap labor that they want and the other buybacks that goes with any presidency. So I want to talk with you about ethnic replacement, the term I created for this show today. We've all heard of ethnic cleansing, haven't we? Ethnic cleansing occurs when an invading military invades a country and, to be honest with you, removes a certain ethnicity from a population by either putting them in concentration camps, deporting them, or killing them. This was done by Stalin. It was done by Hitler. It's been done by others. Now, Obama is not following that, of course, because he's a very decent man. Instead, he is following in the long, long, long footsteps of those who preceded him with the ethnic replacement that the liberal rulers have put in place in this country for a long time. Let me explain where I'm coming from. One, first there was birth control, aimed primarily at whites, but affecting mainly blacks. Hispanics were generally ignored, or Hispanics generally ignored the messages of the birth control eugenicists because of religious, cultural, and linguistic reasons. The Hispanics missed that message, and they knew that they would because of their religious, cultural, and linguistic reasons. Number two, there was the flooding of drugs, the normalization of random orgiastic sex without children, again generally ignored by the Hispanic population for the same above reasons, religious, cultural, and linguistic. Finally, starting with Clinton, there was the denial of green cards to Europeans who wanted to emigrate. There was the massive issuance of green cards to non-Europeans. And now finally there's the massive flooding of the United States with armies of young Hispanics, fertile Hispanics, by the way, to replace the whiter European American. This is ethnic replacement as being practiced by Obama, Holder, and their gang. Now, you have to ask yourself, where are the moral enforcers of immorality, such as Choice or ZPG or the anti-population growth people? Where are all the loudmouths? Where are all the high priestesses of birth and population control, while America is being smothered by the hordes being ushered in from Central America by Obama and Pelosi? The answer, my friends, is these forces of ethnic replacement always intended to diminish the white population and replace it with a more malleable third world population. Obama is orchestrating a Malthusian war against the dominant European American population. Obama is now orchestrating a Malthusian war against the dominant European American population. This, my friends, is ethnic replacement. This is one man's opinion. I wrote it this morning on my bicycle. Sometimes my head clears on a bicycle, and like little bubbles of clarity pop up in my head, and it dawned on me. I said, wait a minute. This is not about anything except a new malleable population that can be controlled by a ruling elite. Now, others are saying things like this. Border agents know what's going on. They know the gangs are using the processing centers as recruitment hubs. We know that the TSA, look at the top of Drudge, the TSA, if you're going to fly this weekend, you'll be frisked by a $9 an hour individual, but they're going to allow illegals on planes without ID. Now, what does that mean? Tell me what that means. And why are the churches still able to hold on to their nonprofit status when they are in cahoots with the administration? The churches are violating the separation of church and state. They're violating their 501c3s. And frankly, if we had a legitimate government, I would strip the churches who are engaged in this of their 501c3s overnight, and they would stop their behavior. They would stop their perverse behavior. Because this is perverse behavior on the part of churches. Is it not? Is it not perverse of churches to be in cahoots with a government that's violating the Constitution? Well, that's one man's opinion. Here is Michelle Obama yesterday to the anti-American LULAC Convention, the United Latin American Citizens Convention, promising that her husband would act on his own to fix the immigration system. She stirs up racial hatred and acts as if she's a queen. She then tells the Latinos the following. I want you to listen to what this hate monger said. She said, back then, Latinos were being brutalized and killed by police and lynched by the KKK. No Mexicans allowed, said Michelle. Latinos couldn't own property or serve in a jury. And if you walked into a public building, you'd often see not 2 water fountains, but 3. 1 white, 1 black, and 1 brown. So this is Michelle Obama, instead of uniting people, stirring up hatred between the races before one of the most dangerous organizations in America, the LULAC group, and you know who they are. They are supremacists, and they want, if you read their actual code of LULAC, they want to take Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and most of California and connect it to Mexico. And so here we have the First Lady stirring up racial hatred and acting as if she's a queen and saying that her, quote, husband, not the president, notice she said my husband, he's going to fix the immigration system. Again, acting like rogue, 2 rogues, king and a queen. The only thing we don't have are the pictures of the shoes in the closet. Or you'd see Imelda Marcos in the White House. She makes Imelda Marcos look like a nun in terms of how she abuses this country. She has 72 servants working for her at public expense, yet you're never allowed to see a picture of them or of her. We're living in a dictatorship, a mild one at that to begin with, but it never ends well. Do any of you disagree with my depiction of this invasion from Central America being orchestrated by Obama as ethnic replacement? I mean, it's a simple statement. People write things, people say things, people create things. I've created a new phrase that you've never heard before. It's not in the literature. That's what you get for listening to the most creative mind in the history of talk radio. Ethnic replacement. You never heard of it. So I gave you the new ratings. I got it from TalkStream Live. They said that TSL top 25 streaming talk shows second quarter report for 2014 celebrates a million-mark milestone for a single quarter listening session ranking report. Michael Savage again leads the way with a whopping 20 share. Rush remains a strong second, while Laura Ingraham surges to third place. And on this, Mark Levin holds a fourth, and Glenn Beck slips to fifth. The TSL top 25 does not, by the way, record radio station listenership. It's about gadgets, iPhones, Androids, click-to-listen links on social networks. So I want to thank you for listening to the show, and there's a reason for it. The reason is pretty clear. The country is under siege by a government that is acting like an enemy. Do you agree or disagree with me that Obama and Holder are practicing ethnic replacement? It's a simple discussion. We have a very hot topic of the invasion from Central America being orchestrated by Quisling Obama and those who've jumped ship and have joined them. And I've asked you why you oppose illegal immigration, and illegal immigrants in particular, because the left is very clever. Never forget that Satan is very smart. And the Satan left says that if you oppose illegal immigration, you're a racist. We all know they use that at the drop of a hat, and it has no meaning anymore whatsoever. So I've asked you to give reasons other than that. And I told you, always make them economic. Always revert to the fiscal conservative arguments because they're real. I mean, A, charity begins at home. B, charity begins at home. C, charity begins at home. 4, who's going to pay for them? 5, the next liberal who says you're just a racist, say, why don't you take them in your own house? 6, what about our own poor? What about the poor in Mississippi, Alabama? Why don't they talk so much about that? Where did our poor go? They disappeared all of a sudden? Every day we hear about hungry and poor in America. The next day there are no hungry and poor. Suddenly we have to take in the poor of the world. Let me remind you of something. There's a statement on the Statue of Liberty. Give me your hungry, your tired, and your poor, something to that effect. I will remind you that when that Statue of Liberty was erected, there was no welfare state. It said, give me your hungry, your tired, and your poor to come here and work. Work their way out of hunger. Work their way out of poverty. Not to come here and sit on their behinds, not learn English and rip the American flag up like it's toilet paper and collect a fat check from Aunt Sam. So don't tell me about the Statue of Liberty, because there was no welfare state. And I'm the son of an immigrant. They worked their hearts out when they came here. They didn't sit at home on a fire escape and look down on the street and throw cigarettes at the passerbys. They didn't burn their mattresses and throw them down on the avenue when they didn't get a welfare check, because they would rather die if they took a dime from the government. My people said they'd rather throw themselves off a fire escape than take welfare. How's that for a change in ethos? Take a look at what's coming in now. Take a look at their ethos. Go take a look at a mall and see who's pushing a baby carriage at 15 with 3 children. Go look. Go look. Go look at who's pushing baby carriages around the country with their husband next to them. Another 15-year-old doesn't work. Do you have any idea where this goes, how this ends? You may have to emigrate out of your own country. Do you understand what's coming? There'll be the very, very, very rich, like in the ex-Soviet Union. The government, which are the very rich, by the way, with the Dachas and the bulletproof limousines and the bodyguards, and then there'll be you, the idiots on the bottom who voted your own demise. You say, it can't happen here, I'm being hysterical. Good. I hope I'm crazy. I hope I'm nuts and nothing like this happens. I hope every one of these illegal aliens becomes a law-abiding, English-speaking American citizen who works for a living. Yeah, sure, that's going to happen. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I, Michael Savage, trust to buy my gold and silver from. SwissAmerica.com. It is the Savage Nation. The country is being overrun by a planned campaign by the Quisling in the White House, who was joined by Glenn Beck, another Quisling, who suddenly cries on the air and says that it's a Christian thing to bring food and teddy bears and soccer balls, and he's going to cook for the illegal aliens on the border, when, of course, it all has to do with money and, of course, never letting a crisis go to waste. In that sense, in my opinion, Glenn Beck is identical to Obama, being an opportunist and following the protocols of that wonderful fellow, the gangster Saul Alinsky from Chicago, who, by the way, was not just a community organizer. Saul Alinsky was deeply involved with Frank Nitti and Al Capone, and that's how they did it. Now, many of you don't know who Quisling was. Quisling has become a noun, but it actually was a man's name, a Quisling. So if I say that Glenn Beck is now a Quisling, I'm referring to a person who collaborates with an enemy occupying force. And the word derives from the Norwegian wartime leader Vidkun Quisling, who was the head of a collaborationist regime in Norway during the Second World War after Germany conquered his own country. And he was put in place as a stooge to rule the collaborationist Norwegian government himself. That's exactly what's going on here. And we have people jumping aboard the Obama freight train in the media who used to declare themselves to be conservative, this and that, whatever was working, they ran with. Why do you oppose illegal aliens? Why do you oppose bringing in these 300,000, quote, children? First of all, most of them are not children. They're not all children. Make no mistake about it. Fully half of them are their mothers. And number two, a good portion of them, if you look at the Drudge Report, one picture is worth 1,000 words, they're sitting on a railroad train, outside in a railroad train, which derailed in Mexico. They're not children. They're 15, 16, 17. They're the age of anyone who could join the military in the third world. They're not children. Why do you oppose amnesty for illegal aliens? I want to know what it is. Is it racial? That's all. Let's clear the air here. Is it all racial? Because that's what the left is trying to say. They're trying to make anyone who opposes illegal immigration into a racist. So let's take it head on. And who do you think has the most to gain by amnesty? Well, the unions, Democrats, churches. Now, we well know that the Democrats have bussed people to the polls for many years in this country. I've seen them when I voted. I've seen them bust in. They don't speak English. They're not citizens. And I've seen them vote here in my county in Northern California. And when I try to show voter ID, the little old ladies with white hair, the good members of the League of Women Communist Voters, would say, oh, no, we don't want your ID. I said, why don't you want my ID? That's because the illegitimate Democrat socialist machine has made it so that you don't need ID. We're one of the only Western nations on earth that doesn't require voter ID, and that was done specifically to permit illegal aliens to put Pelosi, Feinstein, Boxer, etc. in power ad infinitum, forever, in other words. In my opinion, one man's opinion, of course. It's only my opinion. You're not going to read it in your local newspaper. And so now, in addition to busing them to the polls, Obama is flying them to conservative districts. He's busing them to conservative districts. They're being brought in by the trainload to the border to be bused to conservative districts. So now they've escalated it from busing them into flying them in. Do you understand what they're doing here? Why do you oppose illegals, though? Is it for the vote? Is it from other reason? Is it racist? Why do you oppose them? Here's some simple answers for you liberals, or those of you who have liberal friends and other morons out there who don't know what's going on. 1, the lifeboat is full. 2, charity begins at home. 3, don't we have enough poor in this country already? We need more poor. 4, who's going to pay for them? You want to pay for them? You want to pay higher taxes? I mean, there's 4 answers right there. Make it all economic. Always answer the liberal with an economic response. Stick to fiscal conservatism and you won't get into trouble. And always throw it back in their face and say, you know, I appreciate your sentiment. Are you willing to pay for them yourself? I mean, you're very benevolent with everyone else's money. Are you willing to pay more taxes to house, clothe, feed, shelter, and medicate these individuals? Ask them. And then ask them if they're willing to take them into their own house. So what are the values of these children? Their values are that of an authoritarian, socialist government. So who do you think they're going to vote for? An authoritarian socialist?
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Welcome to the Savage Nation, the king of talk radio. That's right, I am now the king. The ratings just came out again. The TSL top 25 streaming talk shows. And Michael Savage has a 20 share. Rush Limbaugh, 12 share. I want to thank you for listening to this show on all the great radio stations that I'm honored to be on, as well as on the internet, the cloud-based servers, gadgets, iPhones, Android apps, and click to listen links on social networks. Remember what I just said. Michael Savage has a 20 share according to TalkStream Live. You have to understand what that means. It means that this show is the most listened to radio show on the internet. That means mostly younger people are listening to the show on the internet. That means there's a monster audience out there that understands that Obama is conducting ethnic replacement in the United States of America, and they don't know where to turn to for salvation. The man is bringing in gangs. He's bringing in non-workers. He's bringing in adult illegals posing as children to enroll in high school. The United States of America is under siege. It's an influx that is aimed at ethnic replacement, in my opinion. I know this is a sensitive topic. I know we're all talking about how this monster can get away with this, how he can go around Congress, go around the Supreme Court, but most importantly, go around the people without being arrested. You heard me. You know, what if you were looking at a banana republic where a president was out of control and he was defying the people's will on a daily basis? There's no country on earth that would tolerate this except this nation of decent Americans, where he puts the money in the hands of lawyers and foreign operatives to flood America with illegal aliens. And we sit here like dunces waiting for someone to save the country. And there's no one to save us. No one. We have a dictatorship right in front of our eyes. He's getting away with it. He's laughing in our face. I'm not just here to entertain you. I've been around sort of too long for that. Entertain I can. I can do the verbal Mick Jagger, believe me. I can do it if I want to, if I'm in the mood. I'm not in the mood. We're being invaded. Now, if we had a viable military that had not been purged by Obama very carefully over the last few years, he purged the military of combat commanders who might have acted to save this country. But he got rid of all of them, and he did it right after Benghazi because they were ready to break their silence. It's all coming out in my book, Stop the Coming Civil War. I have their names, when they were removed, why they were removed, the pretext, the fake accusations. So there is no military anymore. No, there is a compliant group of men with guns. I wouldn't call it a military. So don't look to the military to save the country. You're not going to see a coup in this country to save us from this rogue regime. It's never going to happen. Never. We don't have an opposition party. We have no opposition press. But the worst part is that the billionaires and trillionaires are behind him. He's not doing this on his own. You got to understand, the billionaires and trillionaires are behind this. You take a look at Bill Gates. Why would he be in favor of massive relocation of populations into this country? You say, well, cheaper labor, but these people can't work in his companies. 2-year-old children can't run in his devices. So what's this about? $4 billion they're going to raise it from the taxpayer? Why don't they just look into the Microsoft tax structure, the double Irish and the other schemata used by the major corporations such as Microsoft to evade billions of dollars in taxes every year? And they should take the money from those corporations to pay the $4 billion to give the children soccer balls and tamales and a clean pair of pants, whatever they're going to do with the $4 billion. How much of that money that he's asking for will go into the hands of contractors? Answer all of it. Answer all of it. It's one of the greatest scams in American history. That's why Jesse Jackson all of a sudden said, what? Listen to clip 27 now, and you'll hear what I'm talking about. This is Jesse Jackson.
If we can find the money, and necessarily so to help the children on the border, $4 billion, $2 billion can come to Chicago.
See, he smelled it. He smelled it. He said, oh, my God. I've been working this racket for years, and they're going to give them $4 billion? They can find $4 billion. We can get 2 of it. We can skim off a deuce off it. So don't think that it's falling on ripe ears across the land. Oh, no. Here's the thing. I've given you topics to talk about. Ethnic replacement by liberal rulers, which is ethnic cleansing without murder. And I talked about how birth control was the beginning of this and how it primarily hit whites, and blacks were disproportionately affected by the birth control, by the way, African Americans. And not so strangely enough, Hispanics generally ignored these messages of birth control because of language, because of culture, because of religion. Then they flooded drugs into the country. Then they normalized random orgiastic sex on the homosexual model, which is now rampant, by the way, in the heterosexual population amongst the young. The gay lifestyle has become basically normalized amongst the young, where it's all about sex, not about children, not about marriage. And, of course, that is aimed directly at the population control. And then for many, many years, there's been a denial, in part, largely part, of any green cards to Europeans, by and large. There have been some, but basically very few. But instead, the green cards were given to Africans, Arabian, people from the Middle East, Asia, and, of course, South America. And now we finally see the last spike being driven into the transcontinental railroad of ethnic replacement, which is flooding the U.S., flooding it with armies of young, fertile Hispanics to replace the white or European American. You know, way back when this all started, and Michael Savage has been at this since 1994 on the radio, but long before that, I would say back in the 80s when I wrote a book proposal called Immigrants and Epidemics, and after a very successful 6-book nonfiction career, New York publisher said, great idea, Savage, can't touch it, politically impossible. Immigrants and Epidemics, well, my friends, we see TB, scabies, lice, and of course lice can be washed off with medication, but TB, which is, and this variety of TB we're hearing is the drug-resistant tuberculosis. What nation on earth would do this to the population? A Quisling out to destroy the country. This has nothing to do with the children. They're using them as a Trojan horse, in my opinion. And as far as a guy like Glenn Beck, it's obvious to me what he is. He's just like Obama. Never let a crisis go to waste. I mean, you don't see this? We are going to see the increasing Rio de Janeiroization of the United States of America, with whole cities of government dependents living in shacks. But it could get worse than that. It could get much worse than that. If you read Dr. Zhivago by Boris Pasternak, you will see what happened to the middle class in Russia after the Russian Revolution. Moreover, I told you that there's a deep connection between the churches now, and the immigration issue. And I try to get to the Mormon church and illegal immigration. I touched on it. There is so much money at stake, you have no idea. So why does the Catholic Church want to help the government usher in illegal aliens outside of the obvious to put seats in the pews? Well, you ready for the answer? Enter the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. There is such an office, and guess who runs it? The Executive Office of the President of the United States. He has moved the churches into the White House. Catholic Charities USA is the national office of more than 160 local Catholic charities nationwide that serves millions of people a year. About $2 billion of its budget comes from the Faith-Based Initiatives Office of the federal government. Did you hear what I just said to you? You didn't know that the federal government owns the churches. Did you know that? Did you know about the link between the federal government and the Catholic Church? If you had any idea how much money is involved between the federal government and the churches, your hair would stand up. It's a complete destruction of the separation of church and state. And I can go on and on about it. And I will tell you this, according to the Washington Times over the years, church-owned media, that is Mormon church-owned media, which commands a large share of the Utah market, has continually supported illegal aliens and opposed any legislation that would limit their ability to function freely in Utah. Church-owned radio and TV stations, along with the Desert News newspaper, serve as a public relations arm of the Mormon Church and attempt to sway public opinion by routinely carrying sympathetic stories about illegal aliens, while ignoring the 50,000 Utah children who are victims of illegal aliens, job-related identity theft, and other victims of illegal immigration. Did you know that the Desert News also publishes a Spanish-language newspaper, El Observador? Did you know that following passage of the Arizona Enforcement Bill on Illegal Immigration 2010, there was a strong surge of support for a similar bill in Utah? And fearing that a bill would pass during the 2011 legislative session in Utah, political, business, law enforcement, and religious leaders endorsed what they call the Utah Compact. And I'm going to read it to you. Here it is. The compact was developed over several months by groups and individuals who were concerned about the tone of Utah's immigration discussion. The compact is based on Utah values, and we urge our leaders to use these guiding principles as they address the complex challenges associated with a broken national immigration system. In an attempt to maintain the perception of neutrality on the illegal immigration issue, the LDS Church did not officially sign the compact. But they immediately issued a press release expressing support for the compact. My friends, Glenn Beck is following the Mormon compact. Don't you understand that he's a mouthpiece for the Mormon Church, the liberal elements of the Mormon Church? There's no single Mormon church. There's only, like in America, an elite leadership, and then there's the followers of the church, just like in the Catholic Church. And so that's what's going on, and he's their best mouthpiece. That's how his books have sold so well. And the average person's not going to buy this Connie Barker's books. Church bought millions of copies. I mean, I wish I had such support, but I don't, because I won't sell out to any religious organization that opposes the values of America. I won't do it. There are many things I can tell you that I'm not telling you. But you have to understand that there's huge money involved in this game. Huge, billions of dollars involved in the illegal immigration game. And the beneficiaries include all those groups that I read to you. I gave you the names. I'll read them to you again if I can find it. I went through so much material already. I go through 1,000 pages a week. I'm not complaining. But if you knew what the churches are hiding with regard to their position on illegal aliens, you'd understand that the church is a business. You'd understand that Lenny Bruce was right when he talked about Religion Incorporated. You'd understand that the shuck and jive and the mumbo-jumbo is meant for the sheeple, not for the leaders. Did you understand what I said? LDS says our position is to invite everyone to learn more about the gospel of Jesus Christ and his place for his children, independent of national origin. Well, my friends, a man can only do so much on a daily basis. So why do you oppose the children? Are you a bad person? Are you a racist person? Why do you oppose letting them all come in? Why not break the borders, which is what Obama's doing, laughing in the face of America? Just spitting in the face of America, really. It's sickening. What do you think's going to happen when all of these, quote, children become citizens, instant citizens? Why do you oppose illegals? Is it race-based? I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Today we talked about ethnic replacement by liberal rulers. You've heard of ethnic cleansing? This is the reverse of ethnic cleansing. It's called ethnic replacement, the phrase that I just created today for you, the Savage Nation, that will live forever in the literature of the world. Let me explain what ethnic replacement is. First, there was birth control aimed primarily at whites, but which inadvertently affected mainly blacks. What you don't know is that Hispanics generally ignored these messages of birth control because of religious, cultural, and linguistic reasons. Next came the flooding of drugs, the normalization of random orgiastic sex, again, generally ignored by the Hispanic population for the same above reasons, religion, culture, and linguistics. Finally, there's been the denial of green cards to Europeans, with the massive issuance of green cards to non-Europeans by Obama. And now we see the massive flooding of the United States with armies of young Hispanics to replace the white or Euro-American. This is what I call ethnic replacement, as practiced by Obama, Holder, and his gang. As the moral enforcers of immorality, such as those pushing choice or the old zero population growth crowd, where are all these high priestesses of birth and population control now that America is being overrun by the fertile hordes being ushered in from Central America by Obama and Pelosi? The answer, my friends, is these forces of ethnic replacement always intended to aim their message at the white population and replace it with a more malleable third world population. This is what was done in every dictatorship on the earth. In dictatorships of the past, they just shot those who opposed the regime. This administration and those before it are simply replacing a population that will not stand up to their nonsense. Right now, Obama is orchestrating a Malthusian war against the dominant Euro-American population, in my opinion. This is Michael Savage with my brief description of a new term not yet in the vernacular of the language, ethnic replacement. Thank you for listening, and God bless America.